Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Zolio. Senator Comrie.
Thank you, Senator Bonasek. Your Honor, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, but first I wanted to thank you for wanting to continue your public service and looking at your record of service. It has been highly impressive and vast, and as Senator Nazolio said, you have had a great array of both executive and judicial experience. I just wanted to ask you two questions before I congratulate you. And first I want to say that in working in public service, there's always a temptation to involve and interject yourself, as Senator Nazolio just so passionately stated, in issues. I would hope that you inject yourself in the issues of to raise the age, but also in creating opportunities for people to get relief from civil disabilities on those small issues that they get caught up with that they're not aware of. So we could have a statewide opportunity for people that are involved with issues, or small issues, that they could get relief from those civil disabilities, so that we don't have so many young people that are not eligible for civil service jobs, or not eligible for opportunities, or not even aware that they've received a summons and they wind up going to court for something that they're not aware of. So I would hope that you champion those issues as well on the Court of Appeals. And again, I want to emphasize that as you're in your opportunity, I would hope that you also try to mentor and bring as many people into the judicial system as possible, so that they can be unafraid of interaction with the judicial system, that you can have more young people that are interested in becoming lawyers or prosecutors, and so that we can make sure that there's a continuum of care of people that are interested in doing justice and service to our system as well. So I would hope that in your opportunity, because I believe you will be nominated, I believe that your record has been exemplary, and I think that you will be a great Chief Court of Appeals judge. And I finally want to say that you look much better than your pictures.
Thank you, Senator Comrie. I just want to go through the lineup, if I may. We're going to have Senator Boyle, Senator Diaz, Senator Savino, Senator Breslin, Senator Hoylman, Senator O'Mara, Senator Croce. Next is Senator Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome. Prosecutor, this is my first hearing as a member of the Judiciary Committee, and I'm
Mine too.
thankful for such a historic day. Just a quick question to piggyback on Senator DeFrancisco's earlier comments about law enforcement and prosecutorial misconduct. Obviously, we see across the country there are some communities of color who have grave concerns about our judicial system. I don't know if you've seen Making a Murderer on Netflix, the story of Stephen Avery. Thankfully, it didn't happen in New York, but it happened in Wisconsin. In Suffolk County, where I live, we have our former police chief just arrested by the FBI. Serious concerns, and I've been a law and order guy, throw the book of them type for a long time, but I myself am experiencing some concerns about our judicial system. Just ask you that you make this a priority in your new position. I'm sure you're going to achieve it. And one question, do you feel that experts should be allowed into court to testify about false confessions?
Well, Senator, that matter is currently before the court, an issue around that matter, and so, of course, it would not be appropriate for me.
I understand. Well, please take into consideration how people are feeling. I mean, judicial prosecutorial misconduct is a huge potential problem and concern among New Yorkers and Americans.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Boyle. Senator Diaz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, you know, we have just celebrated Martin Luther King holiday. And there is some people that always talk about the war against women. Well, I'm honored to say that today I have a great honor in supporting a woman, not only because she's a woman, but because she's qualified. But I'm honored to say that I'm supporting a woman, and I congratulate you. And I'm also honored to say that this past weekend in Bronx County, when we are celebrating Martin Luther King, the Bronx County swore in the first district attorney, the first woman district attorney in Bronx County, and the first female district attorney, black, Afro-American in the whole state. So, you know, for those of you that talk about the word of woman, the women are beating us. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to vote yes and to express my support for Judge Di Fiorio, and I wish you the best. My church and I will pray for you.
Thank you.
So God will lead you to do the best thing and to keep leading you the way you have been leading your life. So thank you very much and congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Diaz. Senator Savino.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Bonasic. Welcome, Ms. DiFiore, to the Judiciary Committee hearing. I'm fully confident that you will be confirmed, and you will be our next Chief Judge. And I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to ask you questions about particular cases or your opinions on it. I'm more concerned about the other role that you're about to take on, which is the head of a massive agency with thousands of employees, some of whom you have bargaining units that haven't had a contract in years, so I'm not sure how you're going to figure out how to meet that obligation. But you're going to take on a massive agency that has, in many respects, been starved for resources for a few years now. The former administrative judge, Gail Prudenti, when she would come to testify, she was very good at trying to give us some sense that the court system was able to absorb all of the reductions and the administration of justice was continuing without any interruption. We all know that that is not the case. You are about to take on a massive agency, as I said, that is suffering not just from budget cuts, but you've said in your testimony that your main concern is the speedy and fair administration of justice. You can't do that when you have courts that have to close at 4 o'clock every day because you don't have resources. You can't do that when you don't have enough courtrooms. You know, Senator Hassel-Thompson talked about the number of family court judges that have been appointed in the past few years. That's nowhere near the number of family court judges that we need. But for every family court judge we do appoint, you need a courtroom. You need court officers, you need court clerks, you need court stenographers, you need all of those things. So these are the problems that you're going to have to face. And I'll just leave you with a final problem. Everybody complains in their own county. We all think that we're being shortchanged. But for Staten Island, we really are. A few years ago, former Governor Spitzer signed legislation to finally create a separate judicial district for Richmond County. Forever, we were connected to Brooklyn. And as a result of that, we did not have the sufficient resources. So Governor Spitzer signed the law. We have the 13th Judicial District. We were only given 3 Supreme Court judges. We were told that at some point in the future we would get the rest of them. So Staten Island is entitled to 7 more Supreme Court justices. Brooklyn wants their 3 back. And as you can imagine, the administration of justice on Staten Island is not speedy. While it may be fair, because I have full faith and support in all of the judges on Staten Island as well as the court system, it certainly isn't speedy. We also just completed and opened a brand-new courthouse. It's nice, but we outgrew it months before it was opened. So we have real needs there, and I'm sure every county does. And so I've raised this to make you aware of that, and you really need to take a good, long look at the budget. Don't be afraid to ask for more money. Really, don't be afraid to. We want to help you, because the administration of speedy and fair justice to our constituents is the most important thing to all of us. So congratulations. I'm sure you will be confirmed, and I hope that you will delve in, as you said you will, into the minutia of running this massive agency. Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you, Senator Savino. Senator Breslin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me congratulate the candidate on the expectation you'll be shortly affirmed, and to affirm what Senator Savino just said and others in the Senate have said here and elsewhere, that as I read your decisions and look at your academic background, I have no questions you will be an exemplary Court of Appeals Chief Judge. But there's so much more, and your 2 predecessors, Judge Kaye and Judge Lippman, have gone into areas to make sure that young defendants, poor defendants, defendants in different counties who have unequal representation and no representation in many cases at arraignments, and there's so much more to your job. And making sure that you balance that constitutionally so that Senator Nozzolio is satisfied, but I also think it's, as the Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals, you have a tremendous responsibility to make sure that New York continues to administer justice in a fair and appropriate way, from our children who appear in the criminal justice system through the poor, through the various 62 counties. And I know many of us are depending upon you to continue that trail to full justice. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Senator Breslin. Senator Hoylman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Fiore. Pleasure to see you, and congratulations. And congratulations to the governor for nominating such an outstanding individual. I represent the west side of Manhattan, part of the east side, and I think I hearken back to my colleague's comments about the resource issue. And in particular concern for me is housing. And while we don't have a constitutional Sixth Amendment right to counsel in civil cases, I would argue that in many instances for my constituents, losing your home is nearly as horrific as losing your freedom. These are individuals who have lived in their homes for decades. Many of them are in apartments that are rent regulated, and I think you probably know that there's quite an imbalance in housing court between landlords and tenants, and between landlords and small businesses. So what's happening in Manhattan is a case study of the vulnerable being picked off by the tens of thousands by those in a better position to afford high-priced attorneys and essentially paper defendants to eviction. And something like 11,000 rent-controlled tenants were evicted and lost their apartments in the last several years. 200,000 rent-stabilized apartments were moved off the books illegally by landlords. So this goes to that legal maxim of justice delayed is justice denied. When you can't get into housing court because of the backlog and you can't afford to get a lawyer, so you have to go and represent yourself, and you don't know what you're doing there or know the law, how do we solve that problem? And what are we going to do about it?
Well, Senator, the issue, foreclosure issues and people and the access to civil legal services that people need to assist themselves on those very necessities and basics of life are certainly something that is very high on my agenda, should I be fortunate enough to be confirmed by this body. And you can be certain that that will be a priority on my list to look at and examine and figure out how we're doing on these cases and where there are issues and problematic operational barriers to justice for people. You can bet I will be looking at those as part of my mission.
Thank you. You're going to be the CEO of our court system.
Correct.
And I really would urge you to look to us as an important ally in your efforts to dispense justice fairly and look at alternative models, including community courts that have worked so well in different parts of the state, including my district, to make certain that both plaintiffs and defendants have speedy justice. Thank you.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hoylman. Senator O'Mara.
Yes, Madam District Attorney, over in the corner. Thank you for being here and candidly answering our questions today. As a former district attorney, I want to commend you on your service to your communities where you have lived and worked for so long. I represent a district in the southern tier, the Finger Lakes region of New York State, where many of my constituents have grave concerns over the losing of their personal liberties, their individual rights and freedoms, and in particular with regards to the Second Amendment, which has been at the forefront with the significant gun violence that we have had in our country and in our state. And I commend you for your work in law enforcement and prosecution for gun violence. And I certainly strongly support increased penalties for those that misuse guns and use them in violent ways. However, there are so many law-abiding gun owners that are very concerned about this. And I know that when you were president of the DA's Association in September of 2011, you wrote a letter to Congress lobbying against the National Right to Carry Act at that time. And not to get into the specifics of that issue or any specific issue, but would lead me to believe that you may lean more towards gun control as opposed to supporting Second Amendment rights. And I would like to hear your views and perspectives on how you would approach a case under the Second Amendment, both under the New York State Constitution and the U.S. Constitution.
Well, I think the Second Amendment is clear. The law on the Second Amendment is clear, and I appreciate that as a responsible, law-abiding gun owner myself. That said, as to any particular case, I'm not in a position, obviously, to comment specifically, except to say to you that I will handle any of those matters the way I handle every other case, on its merits, based on the procedural history of the case, based on the laws that apply, and I will interpret the law fairly, honestly, justly, without regard to any outside influence or agenda, Senator.
Do you have a concealed carry permit?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a concealed carry permit?
Yes, I do, sir.
Thank you. Again, along the lines of Senator Bonasek's questions about independence at the beginning, presuming you're going to be confirmed here by the Senate, at the end of this year, my current favorite Court of Appeals judge, Piggott, will be leaving the bench, and he will be the last justice to leave the Court of Appeals that has not been appointed by Governor Cuomo. And in fact, Governor Cuomo took the step a year ago to not reappoint a sitting justice of the Court of Appeals, who was a prior governor's appointment, to appoint one of his own appointees. So, assuming you're the Chief Justice of the Court of Appeals with a full bench of Cuomo appointees, how are you going to manage that in a way that is truly independent from what the governor's agenda may be?
Well, I believe that every one of my future, hopefully, colleagues on the bench come to every case the same way that I have been talking about here during this process, and that we come at every case in an honest way, looking at every case based on the individual merits without regard to who the appointing authority was or was not, without regard to any outside influence. I have full confidence that my colleagues on the bench share that view and have acted honorably on that as well.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Next.
Okay, I'm going to now go to Senator Croce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Madam District Attorney, thank you for joining us today. And thank you to you and your team of career prosecutors at the Westchester County DA's office who do the very real work of keeping us safe in our communities, and I appreciate your fine work there. I was anchored to two of your comments during your opening. Two of the words you used were independence and integrity. And as a former chair of JCOPE, and Mr. Goldberg alluded to that chairwomanship during his testimony, so much of what we're being asked to consider this year in this legislative session with regard to ethics reform, we're being asked to look at the federal model and some of the things that they do at the federal level as best practices. And to that end, at the federal level, there are safeguards within the departments and agencies throughout the federal government that ensure, through inspectors general and other mechanisms, that the bidding process, requests for proposals, requests for qualifications, and the independent expenditures by those agencies are done with watchful oversight to ensure the integrity of the departments and agencies of the executive branch. Do you believe that at the state level, as we seek to mirror some of these best practices, that would be a welcome addition, that those types of safeguards should be mirrored in the executive branch at the state level?
Well, I leave that to your deliberations and your body to determine what would be best. I will say this, though. I feel very strongly about training and education and teaching people about the rules that guide their conduct. I think that most people want to comply with the rules. I think that many people don't know or haven't had an opportunity to learn exactly what the rules mean and require. And to my mind, that's where the focus and emphasis should be, teaching people what the rules are and how to stay in compliance with the rules.
And those should apply both to the legislature and the executive branch?
Oh, absolutely, without question. Judges as well.
Very good. Second question, with regard to raise the age, I understand this is a very emotional topic for so many of us. If a 16-year-old or 17-year-old were to kill a cop or a first responder, if they were to commit the act of rape, if they are 16 or 17 and they're radicalized and commit a terrorist act, does that fall in the same category as some of the other groupings that we seek to take out of the population of those who have reached the age of majority?
No, if you read the Commission's recommendations, those classifications and categories are dealt with in the adult criminal court.
Very good. And just to follow up on what Senator O'Mara was asking, so does the Second Amendment, in your opinion, confer an individual right?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. And again, thank you for your appearance here today.
Welcome.
Thank you, Senator Croce. Senator Amador.
Nice to see you, Madam District Attorney, and thank you also for the call ahead of time to introduce yourself and having me get a chance to know you. I do applaud your efforts and your hard work. Being a wife, a mom, now a grandmother, it is quite admirable for all of your efforts, as well as to serve and to do the work that for this great state. One question that I have is, with the rise of heroin use throughout the state, do you have a plan to address this epidemic through the local court systems?
Well, the answer is no. But what I am committed to is drug treatment courts. I helped to establish, back when Chief Judge Kaye was the chief judge, I sat on the Commission on Drugs and Courts, where we made recommendations for institutionalizing drug treatment courts so that offenders whose drug-related crimes that were truly motivated by their addiction to substances are dealt with in a way that addresses the underlying issue rather than rotating people through. So if your question goes to my support of treatment alternatives to incarceration, yes, certainly I am most supportive and committed to that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Senator Rasenhofer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over here. Welcome. First of all, thank you for being here today. I've had an opportunity to read the resume, and obviously with your experience as DA and as judge, you certainly have the training and the background to be considered for this position. And I sat here and listened to a number of the questions dealing with advocacy and, what your take is on the Constitution. So I would just like to ask you, and maybe this has been addressed, but I'm going to ask it a slightly different way. How do you, as a sitting justice, knowing the positions that you've taken advocating for or against certain things, and then you're dealing with issues that are addressing either those identical issues or very similar issues, how do you separate the two hats and make a decision, keeping in mind what the Constitution says, what the facts of the case are, and your prior advocacy one way or the other?
Well, I have a fair amount of experience across the criminal justice system and the justice system. I've served as a prosecutor, I've served as defense counsel, I've served as a judge, I've been the district attorney. I know and understand the roles and the responsibilities and the ethical rules that guide each one of those categories of professional responsibilities, and I have always abided by them, and I will continue to.
But in terms of, in each of those roles, the advocacy, if you're a DA and you're advocating for something,
Correct.
that's one thing. If you're a defense attorney and you're advocating for something, that's another. As chief judge, if you're advocating for something, is that a little bit different than the...
Is that, I'm sorry?
Is that a little bit different because you now have a different role? You're not a DA anymore. You're not a defense attorney. You're now the chief judge of the court system. So how does that advocacy come into play, whereas it might have been a little bit different when you had a prosecutorial role or defense counsel role?
Well, you correctly point out the different roles of the chief judge, and on the adjudicative side, as I said, the cases are the cases and they are inviolate. On the advocacy side, to my mind, the chief judge advocates on issues that affect court process and the ways in which we service and honor our court mission and our promise to deliver on that mission, which is about operational issues and access issues that move the business of the courts to honor our responsibility to fairly, justly, and speedily resolve all of the cases and controversies that come to our courthouses throughout the state.
Another question I wanted to ask you, and as a fourth-generation lawyer, so my family has been in the legal business for a number of years through the generations, you had mentioned a comment before when you were asked about there were some questions about tenants' rights and civil rights in a non-criminal matter. Do you believe under the Constitution that there is a constitutional right to an attorney in a civil matter?
Well, Senator, that is an issue that will likely come before the court, and I am not in a position to opine on that. Wouldn't be appropriate.
One more question I wanted to ask you. If the court does move in the direction of transferring cases for 16, 17-year-olds from justice courts, town courts, city courts, village courts, would that then necessitate changing the role of those courts because they would be having fewer cases to move to a district court model?
Well, we don't know what the model is going to be. There are many variations of the model. We will wait and see what the legislature, if the legislature determines that that's appropriate, and whatever it is, we will make certain that within the bounds of the law and the constitutional parameters, we will meet the staffing needs to accommodate those cases.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Senator Eisenhower. Senator Serino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's very nice to meet you, and I have your honor. And I have to say, I enjoyed my questions that my colleagues asked you and your answers. I'm very happy to hear about your independence, regardless of being a governor appointee. It's very important to me. And I also, Judge Brand said to say hello. We spoke very highly of you. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Serino. I just would like to conclude quickly. Excuse me. Senator Latimer, who's not a member of the Judiciary, but we will give him the privilege of the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge, it's good to see you again. And, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the privilege. I just wanted to chat briefly with my colleagues. I've had the good fortune of knowing this candidate, dare I date it, for 40 years. And more importantly than the length of time, many of the questions that came up at this table are terrific and very timely questions. Senator Ranzenhofer's questions in the last couple of minutes, can you make the transition from a district attorney's role of advocacy and prosecutorial role to a judicial position? And this candidate has had that exact experience already when she served as an ADA in Westchester County, head of the Narcotics Bureau, and then was elected to both the county court with criminal cases and then later to the state Supreme Court on civil matters. So I've had the good fortune, living in Westchester, to see this candidate make that transition once already in her career, which I think is important. Senator Nozzolio and Senator Bonasic have both raised a question of independence and a very important question to ask, a very timely question. I've served in my past experience as chairman of our county legislature and for 2 brief years as chairman of my political party. And in both cases, I had reason to interact with the judge, and in both cases, I can tell you that no influence, either from the county governmental side or the political side, mattered to her in the decisions that she made. And so I am perfectly comfortable being able to feel that my experience with her over the years made the answers to your questions legitimate and honest responses. And, Mr. Chairman, just from my standpoint, we even both served as very young people inside city government in Mount Vernon. She was a summer intern with a very well-respected city judge, and I was a rookie in the planning department. We were both in our 20s, and it's hard to believe we're sitting here today, Your Honor.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Mr.
Indeed,
Chairman.
Senator.
Thank you, Senator Latimer. But I would say that you're still both very young. In conclusion, I would just, before I call the question, obviously you have the intelligence, you have the varied experience, you have terrific communication skills, you have personality, and I think you're a human being of deep substance. I think you're going to make an excellent Court of Appeals judge. And at this time, I would like to move the nomination to the floor for consideration and call a vote. Second by Senator Hessel-Thompson. All those in favor, raise their hand. George, you can raise your hand twice. Anybody opposed? It's unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank you,
Meeting
sir.
adjourned.
Thank you, sir.